All right. Well, hello, Bonnie.
Hi, here we are.
Here we are. Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Lauren, Chief Customer Officer and co-founder of TrovaTrip. Got Bonnie here today as well. Thank you all for submitting such thoughtful questions in advance to today's live Q&A session. Today we will be doing just that, live Q&A. We'll be answering some of those questions that were submitted in advance, while also taking live questions throughout. So for those of you who are dropping in, please submit your questions or share in the chat. And if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, feel free to go ahead and do that as well. This is for our host community. And today we have Bonnie Schroeder here, who we absolutely adore. She is a 10x Trova Trip host. She's been all over the world on so many Trova trips, from the Galapagos to Patagonia to Thailand to Egypt, you name it. And so today we will be asking Bonnie some of those questions. And to kick things off, Bonnie, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your hosting journey and how you got started.
Oh, beautiful question. Yeah, so my hosting journey with Trova actually started in 2020 when Trova reached out to me. Obviously, no trips were happening at that time, but we ended up hosting our first trip to Iceland in 2021, and we took 18 people. And I was a little hesitant at first because I didn't know what I was getting into, but decided to just trust in the whole process and ended up having the most amazing experience with those 18 travelers. And since then, probably 12 or 13 of those people continue to travel with us, which is just made up like our perfect little core group of travelers. And it's really been the most beautiful way to connect deeper to our community in gorgeous parts of the world, and ultimately really establish real friendships, not just like followers or online numbers, but actual real human relationships that matter. And we've continued to lean further and further into the community since that very first trip. And like you said, I've hosted 10 trips since then. We're about to do our 11th to Morocco in just 2 weeks. And Trova really is just made the whole process so easy. I was just talking about this too, how well, I think most people these days have a lot of decision fatigue. So to have something that is planned out for you and an itinerary that is, trusted and people that are vetted and all that, to just have it handled, it's so nice. And I appreciate that so much. That's one of my favorite parts about Trova. I think a lot of other people like that part as well. But the whole experience has been so great. We wouldn't still be around for 10, 11 trips if it wasn't. And Trova just continues to provide amazing experiences for us. So I'm happy to be, one of the OG hosts, and happy to get to connect with other hosts and share everything that I possibly can.
Hmm. Can't believe it's been that long. We are so lucky to have you.
It's been that long. Yeah.
So one of the questions that was submitted is they wanted to know if you were hosting trips on your own before Trova Trip.
No, I actually was not hosting trips, and it really wasn't even something I had considered doing until they reached out. And luckily, I knew of two other women who had hosted with Trova. So I was able to kind of pick their brains on the whole process, and how their experience was, which was great. But I was not doing anything like this at all. I wasn't hosting retreats yet. I was just working as a coach and then also just growing my own social media. This would have been like 2020. So just really still like establishing myself in that social media space and figuring out what direction I wanted to take things. I knew that my career as a competitive lifter wasn't going to be a forever thing. And I knew that, social media was a way to continue this connection with my followers, but I didn't really know how that was going to look outside of, that lifting fitness world. And luckily Trova gives that opportunity to connect with your community in this manner, which is so incredible. But no, I was not hosting anything prior to this.
Well, kind of following on to that question, the audience would like to know what has been the biggest personal or business benefits of continuing as a Trova host?
Yeah, really, really good question there. And the the benefits I think are just vast, right? You are getting the opportunity to connect with aligned travelers, your community, maybe people that are already clients, maybe people that have already bought into what you do or sell or whatever it is that you're promoting on social media. And so you're just getting a chance to connect deeper with these people. So maybe they weren't a client before, maybe they haven't bought something before, but after this trip, after they have an incredible experience and amazing connection with you, maybe that means they're bought into your world, what you offer, a little bit further. I mean, you're creating connections and establishing relationships for life, and that is what I encourage everyone to remember. Any host I talk to, like, remember the human element of this. Like, remember that the relationships you're making trump everything else. Maybe this person is just like a new best friend that you haven't gotten to meet yet. Maybe they come on a trip with you and then they decide that they're going to travel with you forever, right? Like, you just don't know what that decision could lead to. It could lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then they could bring a friend in. And then these ripples just spread. And then this just grows naturally. And then you're left with this incredible community of people that already want to reunite and get together on the next trip. And from a financial standpoint, I mean, how amazing that you can check all those boxes of relationship building, community building, making new friends, and also get a little paycheck on the back end. Most of our trips have been payouts anywhere from 8 to 20K. Obviously, that's very dependent on where you're going, how many people are coming. But how amazing that there's also an opportunity to do what you love and get paid for it. So it's been an incredible option for us. And Trova isn't winning unless you're winning. They want to see you filling up trips. They want to see you making it happen. So it's also really about how far you want to take it. We host 2 trips a year, one in the spring, summer, one in the fall, winter, because we also offer a lot of things. So we would probably be doing more travel if we did less retreats here, like stateside. But if you are really travel focused, like niche social media, and you want to host a trip every month or every other month, like, Trova will support you in doing that. If you want to make this like your number one source of income, Trova will support you in that. So if you can make it happen, if that's something you want to do, awesome. I think it's worth the time and investment of filling those trips.
You touched on so many great things there. I think at the end of the day, to like summarize, like TrovaTrip makes it possible for you to build deeper connections with your community. You're really building deeper loyalty with your most loyal audience who wants to go travel the world with you, and they're forming friendships. They want to come back and
Mhm.
travel together. And we've talked a lot in the past about how when you first learned about TrovaTrip, you thought this was too good to be true. Like it must be a scam. So it's
I did,
a
yeah.
while back. Hopefully we've made some ground since then and demything that. But the fact that you do get to make money on top of it is really, really powerful. And you also touched on the fact that this is a way to do this in a repeatable, scalable way. You have a mix
Mhm.
of trips you do here in the US on your own, you plan them, but when you want to do international, we're an easy way to do that for you and source those operators and make that process seamless. So really helpful information there. I want to transition a little bit into the building and designing experience. There was a lot of questions around this topic. One of them specifically was about how much creative control do you have as a host over the actual trip experience?
Yeah, great question. That's something that comes up a lot in my conversations with hosts. And I think it is important to remember that it's pretty itinerary dependent. There might be itineraries that have a little bit more built in free time, a little bit more flexibility. So I think it's really just important to talk to your host success manager and give them a really clear idea of the trip you're wanting to create. Do you want a free time to have meditation and breath work and yoga? Or are you just like, let's go from sightseeing to sightseeing to sightseeing, right? So again, very, very destination dependent. Like I don't know where we would have squeezed in much like free time in like Egypt because you're like, go, 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 like on to the next thing, which is awesome. Um, but I think it's really important to just start from a place of sharing what you envision the trip to be. That way there's no like unwanted surprises as you go through that. So you do have some say, again, some itineraries more than others.
Yeah, and I can add to that a lot of hosts will build in informal gatherings into those itineraries that have more space in them to add spirituality workshop or, hey, I'm going to be doing photography one-on-one. So we've seen a lot of people throw in their own flavors and spices that way. And as you start to do volume on the platform, your dedicated host success manager can partner with you on some flexibility and design
Mhm.
changes that we reserve for our hosts who've completed at least 3 trips or more with us. I also want to jump to this next question here. The question is really around like what does the host handle versus what does TrovaTrip handle? And if you want to really speak to the perspective of the host, I can of course touch on some of the things that Trova provides.
Yeah, absolutely. So the host is really responsible for marketing and selling and advertising the trip, right? You are the reason that people are wanting to sign up for that trip. I think it's important to remember that. Like people can go to Thailand on their own at any point in time, but they're choosing to go with you. So as a host, I think you kind of set the tone, set the energy for the trip, which is a really, really, really important role. um, but prior, to the trip ever starting, you are in charge of marketing it, talking about it on social media, interacting with potential aligned travelers, and sharing with people why this is too incredible of an opportunity to miss. Trova handles all the back end things, the itinerary details, all that, and Lauren can get into that. But then once you're on the trip, like I said, setting that tone, setting the energy for the trip. And there is a guide on ground who is the one telling people, okay, we're meeting in the lobby, have a day bag, have whatever, they're kind of like saying we're on to the next thing. You're not expected to be like an expert in, for example, Thailand. You're not expected to be an expert in Thai temples or anything like that. That's the guide's job. But you do act as kind of like a liaison between the guide and the group. You're always taking, temperature checks. How's the group feeling? Making sure that everyone's needs are being met. If there's any needs, you need to ask the guide for, kind of just making sure that everyone's taken care of. And that's like the best use of your time and your energy, right? Because you're the connector. You get to be the, that glue that has everyone sticking together on this trip. And I think it is a really, really cool position to be in, to be the one who sets the energy and the tone like that.
I love that. It's like the host really brings the vibes. They rally the group. They
Mhm.
invite their audience to join. And if
Yeah.
I were to try and like summarize what Trova does, like we really provide the infrastructure to make this really easy for anyone getting started. Like you shared earlier, prior to Trova Trip, you never hosted a retreat. So what a great way to get started. We can help you get set up with a catalog full of itineraries for you to choose from, and you can pick something off the shelf and see what dates are available, play around with pricing, set your own margin. And then we kind of take it from there with the back end stuff. We handle traveler support and communications. Every traveler who books a trip with you has their own traveler portal where they can make payments, they can book insurance, they can do all these things that, like, if you were doing this on your own, you'd have to help facilitate, coordinate, and answer all those questions. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of time. And of course, we're vetting all these incredible operators who are running your trips and providing local guides and booking accommodation. So if you were to do this on your own, all that work would fall on you. You'd be, building it in spreadsheets and Google Docs and trying to find your activities and where are we going to stay and how are we going to get from point A to point B. So we really take all that hard planning off your plate so you can focus on your community and fostering connection,
Mhm.
inviting them to join you. So
Yeah.
it's long-winded because we offer so much service in addition to the tech stack. But yeah, in summary, I really think of TrovaTrip as the back end office, the infrastructure.
Yes. And that's the best part. Like that's why Trova does so well is because the host just has to be themselves and they don't have to worry about all those other back end system things. And it's so nice just to go on a trip and trust in the fact that everything is handled and you can just sit back and relax and enjoy it with your travelers and focus on the connections, the community, the relationship building, which is the part that the host does best anyway.
Absolutely. A little bit more on planning, and then we'll jump into selling and filling trips, which was a lot of what you covered on your last webinar. But around the planning process, have you ever created a trip and sold it in a short timeline? I know TrovaTrip typically recommends for international travel planning 6 to 8 months out. Have you ever sold a trip in a shorter window? Very specific.
We, yeah, we try to stick to that 9 months to a year window as far as planning and selling trips, just because we attract a lot of people who have kids, need to figure out childcare, need to figure out maybe PTO or what their budgets are looking like. So I try to give people as much advance notice as possible.
And I can share from the analytics side that we've actually seen trips sell at a better rate and faster when they're around 10 to 12 months out, which is counter to what someone might think if they've never hosted and sold retreats before. If you're planning personal travel, some people are more spontaneous and will book a trip 3 months out. But in the group travel space and industry standard, it's usually around that 6 to 8 month mark. But with Trova, for whatever reason, we see a sweet spot in that 10 to 12 month mark. Um,
Mhm.
and then the other
Mhm.
thing on planning before we jump into selling, someone wanted to know how long does that planning process look like from I'm decided I want to plan my trip to I'm ready to launch and sell it. What's that window look like for you?
hmm Yeah, so for me, like I said, we do 2 trips a year. And again, this is just my own personal experience. I think other hosts maybe have different strategies. So I think it's really important to figure out what works for you and your community specifically. But so if I have my spring and summer trip and my fall and winter trip already full. Let's just say we're going from this point, like May right now. So this next one is full. My winter trip is full. I am definitely going to be talking about where I want my first trip of 2027 to be already. So I am looking at a year out already. And I would get that launched first to this group of travelers that is coming to Morocco with us. I think when you launch and who you launch to is super, super important. If you are launching to a group of people that you're already on a trip with, they're much more likely to say yes. They're excited about the current trip. They want to reunite. They're getting inspired by each other talking about the next trip. So I do think there is an important kind of process as to when you're launching and who you're launching to. So we would launch about a year out. I would have that early bird link, and I would have that early bird link sent to my current travelers and any like people that are on my VIP travel list. And ideally it fills up in a perfect world. It fills up within a couple days or a couple weeks and I can start looking forward to the next one. I personally do one trip at a time, so I wait until one is full before I start talking about the next one. This is a different strategy, like host by host, because a lot do more than 2 trips a year. But we've found that that works for us.
And you're in such a different stage than someone getting started, right? Like when you think about, oh my gosh, I've been
Yes.
on 10 international trips with TrovaTrip. I've built this repeat business, like going back to your first trip, what was it, 12 or 14 people have repeated with you on the Iceland trip? Like that's incredible. Once you start going on these trips and building that connection, these real relationships, that strategy gets much easier. Can you wind it back and kind of think back to when you first got started? What that process looked like. Were you leveraging leveraging, the TrovaTrip survey? Were you building your email list? Did you have your own email list? Did you upload it? Like, can you
Mhm.
try and think back to that time and maybe share an experience of starting from scratch?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were first starting, we were, starting to do the Trovas and we're also starting to build our own community. And we use Discord for everyone in our coaching community. And they were the ones whose emails we were uploading to Trova to be on our email list. They were the ones that we were surveying. And we ultimately did end up surveying the rest of our social media audience, those that wanted to partake, but we started with the people that were already bought into what we were doing. They were already people that had raised their hand and said, yes, I want the coaching. Yes, I want to be a part of the community. So therefore, more likely to say yes to the next thing. And of course, we want to give those people early access to whatever we're doing. So in the beginning, when you are building something from scratch, I think it really is important to think about that relationship building as like the ultimate thing that needs your attention, because none of this happens without community, right? So it is important to consider like every single person's opinion and that relationship that's being built, because truly at the end of the day, those are the people that are going to be filling up your trips. And it is nice that you can email or that you can upload your own email list to Trova. So if this is something that you've been building and kind of cultivating for a while, again, this trip announcement is getting to the people that really matter the most. Like I said, the people that have already raised their hand and said yes to you. But I think the community building really should be the thing that has your number one, your all of your focus, right? It is not take a trip with me. It's I want to take you guys somewhere. So really keeping that focus on the community from start to finish throughout the whole process.
Thank you, Bonnie. And just so everyone knows, I'm going to continue going through a couple more questions around selling and filling trips, and then I'm going to start answering some of the questions in the Q&A just to make sure for folks who are here that they get those questions addressed as we get further into this session. What was I going to say? One thing it's probably worth adding for new hosts who are new to TrovaTrip and maybe haven't gotten started yet is that part of the platform features and benefits is you do have that ability to upload an email list or build your CRM in our platform, and then you can access our email marketing services. On average, I believe it's around like 20% of bookings will come through these services and email marketing. And then also what we found is when hosts build an email list of at least 100 responses, their success rate gets significantly greater. And then if it gets to 150 and 300, the odds just get better and we're able to support more spots being sold through email marketing, where it's less work for you once the trip's live because it can do a lot of the promotion and storytelling for you and support your marketing efforts. Because I think some people ask,
Yes.
like, why would I build my email list? And it's just so important when selling something that is, $3,000+ It's a helpful tool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's always
Um,
it's always yours. Like it's this thing that you get to keep adding to and you can access if you ever need it.
That's a good point. You can export it if you're
Yeah.
selling retreats through your own, website too, like you do domestically, or that's another thing. One of the next questions I want to address is around the topic of like community, and it specifically, they want to know what size audience does someone realistically need to successfully sell and fill a trip?
Probably smaller than you think. I've seen people with 1 million followers that can't fill up a trip. So I think it's a pretty big range. I would say having a couple thousand is probably perfectly fine as a minimum. And I think it just boils down to how engaged your people are. If you have a smaller but better engagement on your Instagram, social media, whatever, you'll probably be just fine. It's so much better than having 1 million people, but no one's really invested in you and they're just watching from the sidelines. Back to the whole relationships are going to trump everything. This is so true in this instance. So I don't know that there's a sweet spot. Maybe you can speak to that, Lauren, but it's not necessarily like a bigger is better type deal.
We've ran so much research and analysis on this topic because at the end of the day, how many followers you have does not matter. I mean, it's incredible if you've built an online following of, say, 1 million. But at the end of the day, if you're thinking about traveling the world with your community and offering these experiences, it boils down to how close that community is. And we've seen people be successful with a couple thousand followers on Instagram, people who have a brick and mortar, a bookstore, and maybe like
Mhm.
less than 1,000 followers on their social media because it's not their focus, but everyone in their town knows that they do amazing events and book clubs, and that community wants to travel together. So we've seen
Yeah.
such a range of people find success using our platform. And it just really boils down to how do you show up in those spaces? Do people feel connected to you, want to travel with you? Are you fostering community among your audience? And do they feel like this is a great place and group to go spend their money and travel the world together? So yeah, at the end of the day, follower count doesn't matter as much. Um, okay, so the next question is, how far in advance should hosts start promoting a trip? I feel like we've touched on this a little bit, so maybe you can speak to like promotion frequency and like how often are we talking about trips?
Hmm. Yeah, again, the my personal sweet spot is about a year out. I'm talking, so again, I'm already talking about what I'm doing in May next year. And when it comes to frequency, the more the better, honestly. Sales psychology, people typically need to see something 20 to 25 times before they remember it is a thing. And if you are a brand new host who's just starting out, people might be a little like iffy, like, oh, what is this? Like, this is something she hasn't offered before. So you have to kind of establish that trust and confidence that, like, yes, this is a thing that you do now. And you'll have that proof of concept after that first trip that you can share as well, and use all the great content from that trip. But in this instance, I would say more is better, actually. So constantly sharing, like letting your people know that this is coming up, letting them know how excited you are for it, letting them know why you wanted to create this. Obviously, like talking head videos are typically going to be content that performs better, because people want to get a feel for your vibe and your energy and like who they're flying to a foreign country to spend a week with. I think it's really important to get that vibe across. But as far as the content, I would say frequency is key.
Yeah, and I can add that on average, we typically see 1 to 2 promotions that are detected, meaning that they drove site traffic to your trip page. You do that for about 30 to 45 days, your trip will likely confirm. And so often we hear that people are afraid of being salesy. They're afraid of annoying their audience. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard from hosts who've gone on multiple trips and they'll be posting photos from those trips and they're like, hearing from people in their DMs, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you do these types of experiences.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that slip through the cracks, even when you're like, oh my God, I've talked about this 5 times this week. Like someone hasn't seen it. So I think it's important to be okay with that frequency equation, if you will, because what an incredible opportunity we don't want people to miss. And that's just it, is we're bringing this trip to our audience is like, you can't miss this experience. Like, it's going to be amazing. I want to make sure you guys have all the information and all the details. And if you are genuinely excited and hyped as a host, they're going to see that in your content, and it's going to be authentic and wonderful, and they're just going to pick up on that excitement and also get excited.
Oh, I love it. I'm going to answer some questions in the Q&A. One of them was, I've hosted group trips, but not with TrovaTrip. Can I still access the star host itineraries? I can go ahead and answer that one. So I would say, let's get in touch with someone from the team. If you've previously sold retreats, that is something we can support and facilitate by, changing that on the back end of the product. So create your account. We can support you. Reach out to support. If you have a dedicated host success manager, talk with them. Because at the end of the day, that inventory is reserved for hosts who have experience selling. And so we're happy to support if you have that experience. The next question here is specifically for you, Bonnie. At what point did you decide that trips were a good next step for your community? And I know we may have touched on some of that a little bit earlier, but it'd be helpful to touch on it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went into that first trip that we hosted in 2021. We hosted to Iceland. I went in that like not having any clue if this was going to be a good next step. I just kind of crossed my fingers and hoped it would be awesome. And it was absolutely life changing. We had the most incredible experience in Iceland. We had the most incredible guide who's actually come to the States and visited us multiple times now. But the group just bonded and connected so beautifully. My husband and I, he's my co-host on everything, we just sat there and were like, okay, well, this is a thing we have to do now because this was so amazing. We just made 10 new best friends out of this group. And how soon can we get the next one scheduled? So it really took having that first experience. Before we were fully bought in, and that's okay. If you are interested in hosting, but you're also kind of like not so sure, I would encourage you to join a trip like as a traveler so you can get a feel for it and understand how it works and how it feels from the traveler's perspective. Talk to that host while you're on that trip. Obviously, I'm always available for one-on-one conversations and stuff like that too, just to talk about the hosting experience. But that was it for us. Like we did that trip to Iceland and I'm like, this is everything. Like I'm in love with this whole experience, how it has been from start to finish. When can we get the next one on the calendar?
It's so funny because we started this business back in 2018 was the first year we started running trips. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to speak with hundreds of hosts. And one of the things that always stood out to me is for most hosts who've never done a trip before or planned their own retreat, they're kind of like, let's just see what happens. Like, this is interesting. Like, I would love to go to this destination or explore the
Mhm.
world. And then once they go on that trip, that's where they go, oh, wow, like this, there's something more here. Like the friendships
Yeah,
formed, the people we met. And then also, on average, our hosts earn about $7,500 on their first trip. And so that's just the cherry on top is like, oh, that was really powerful for me and my community. And I can make money doing this. And suddenly it starts to get a little bit more serious.
totally. And like I said in the beginning when Trova reached out, I'm like, okay, it seems a little too good to be true. Like, are we talking about a scam here? And because I'm like, the things that they're promising, I'm like make friends, have a free trip, get a paycheck, like see the world. And I feel like with social media, that people can travel for free or are getting paid to travel or whatever, but it felt very like ethereal up until that point. And then you're like, wait a second, here's a way to make this real. I can check every single box of seeing the world, getting a paycheck, making friends, bonding deeper with my community. I'm like, oh, so there's actually no downside. Like it's not too good to be true. Like, so yeah, we had to have that first experience so we could really get a feel for it. And after that, we're like, we're in, we're fully in, we're totally bought in. Let's do this.
And we'll get to this section in a bit when we're kind of done talking about a lot of the selling and making money piece. We'll get into the like hosting and group dynamics because I want to set the stage that like it is work. Like you are doing a lot of facilitating and helping form these connections. And so I'd say the money is hard earned, but it's a fun way to make money. So we'll get on
Totally.
that here in a bit.
I think
But
there's much harder ways to make money.
It's true. No, you could be sitting at a desk all day, and
I
a lot of people do that, myself included, and
could be
trying
doing
to,
construction work, right? And you're like, go to Iceland. Okay.
yeah, right. Okay, so one of the questions was really specifically about like content that you've seen convert well. And as a
Hmm.
social media expert, I'm sure you can speak to a lot of strategies. You brought up the like talking head, promotional type content. I love to hear some things that you've seen work well or any trends that are high performing.
Absolutely. Yeah, the talking head thing has to be front of mind. I think, like I said, people want to get a feel for who you are, your vibe and your energy. And I think you absolutely owe that to them, and should do whatever you need to do to make them feel really comfortable and confident about the whole booking process. One thing that I think is really smart to do with your Instagram is have, if you have a trip that's coming up and that you're actively promoting, have on the top pinned probably three things. I would have a talking head video about the trip itself, why you wanted to make it happen, why you're so excited about it, why you've always wanted to go there, just like kind of like a hype reel. The second thing having pinned is a carousel of the itinerary so people can easily swipe, see what's happening on all the days of the trip, right? And then another reel, maybe that it's a talking head of you answering frequently asked questions. People likely have never heard about Trova before. So how can we make them feel comfortable and confident in booking through Trova and in sending money to Trova? And then at the end of that frequently asked questions, I would also have some type of call to action where people can request a call with you. So if you watch this frequently asked questions about my upcoming trip to Iceland, and if you comment Iceland below, I'll make sure you have all the details, right? And then if they are commenting that, you can slide into their DMs, start a conversation, get them on a Zoom, kind of following that yes path that I spoke about in the webinar in February. Those CTAs can be great, but anything that you post really should be focused on that human element, that emotional element that is going to like connect with them in a way that they know exactly how they're going to feel on this trip, making these new friends. They have no fears, they have no worries because you answered all those questions. They see all the itinerary right here, and all that is just easily accessible, pinned at the top. People don't have to go scrolling to try to find this information on your page.
These are such great best practices and really tried and true playbook that we see work well across hosts and trip to trip. And I love that one of your strategies, Bonnie, focusing on one trip at a time, because when you think about pinning trip specific information on your Instagram, if that's where your community lives, it's so helpful for people to go back and reference and be like, how much was the price? What were those dates again? And it's can be hard when you're overwhelmed by content and there's a million things in someone's LinkedIn bio to be like, what was that trip that I saw? Oh, it's out of my brain. It's gone. And that's why those tactics are really helpful from bringing someone from awareness to consideration to like, oh yeah, I'm ready to book. And then something I know you do well is like selling through your DMs, offering personal one-to-one conversations. It's so helpful. Like hearing that you're a
Mhm.
real legit person who's going to be on that trip and be there with me, like helps me feel more comfortable actually going, okay, I can do this if I'm a solo traveler.
Yes, absolutely. Anything that you can do to help kind of ease those concerns. And, this is a big part of the yes path is I personally would be very unlikely to give someone thousands of dollars before they had a Zoom call with me and like introduce themselves. Like, and when you say it like that, you're like, oh, that's like kind of a good point. Like, I would probably be the same way, right? So why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we prioritizing like those one-on-one connections? And there will always be, I think, a spike of signups and travelers that are stoked and ready to go the second that you launch. But a lot of times after that, it takes more intentional relationship nurturing. And I've absolutely filled lots of trips by taking a couple of calls and just getting to know people and just again being interested in them, not interesting. I'm interested in them and why they want to go. And like I said, focusing on that human element and the relationship building above all else, and just keeping that in mind when you're making the content.
Great. I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then we're going to transition to a question about building repeat travelers. One of these questions, great question. What are the biggest mistakes first-time hosts make when trying to book out their trip?
Ooh, that's a good question. Biggest mistakes. I think trying to have the focus on you as the host versus the focus and attention on the travelers. I see a lot of content that is take a trip with me. Okay, like I would switch that and I would just like rephrase that to I want to take you on a trip or let's go. Make it more of like a joint thing where they're feeling a little bit more involved versus the attention being on the host. Um, I think that it is really important for you as the host to have an idea of how you want the trip to feel. And this is not necessarily a mistake that I see people making, but something that I would highly suggest doing as a new host is having, again, a clear definition of how you want the trip to feel. Do you want your travelers to feel really empowered and to make decisions on their own? That way you can set the tone from night one of like, here's my expectations for the trip. We do this on night one. We tell everyone, do what you need to do to make this your best trip possible. That might be different than someone else's definition. So if you need more quiet time, please take it. If you have a different social battery than other people, let them know. Everyone else, be respectful of people's social batteries. So just setting the tone and understanding like what you want it to feel like, I think is something that a lot of hosts could do better. And I think it would solve a lot of potential hiccups that might arise on the trip because you're setting that tone and that expectations right away. So even before the trip starts, get a really, really, really clear idea of how you want it to feel. Those are the only things that come to mind right away when I'm thinking of like mistakes.
Mhm.
And so much of this is figuring out what works with your community and just social media in general. Is just talking about this. Like so much of this is just like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. And maybe something that stuck last week isn't sticking this week, and just being okay with trying new things and pivoting because social media is always changing. So you have to be okay with adapting along to that process.
Yeah, and so many of our hosts have different community groups, and some of them are on YouTube, some of them have audiences in Patreon, some of them are exclusively communities in a Facebook group where there isn't a me,
Mm.
it's a community and someone helping manage and facilitate as an admin. So there's so many different strategies, but like tried and true is helping people envision themselves there. Why do I follow you? Why do I show up in this space? Do I feel like I belong? And is this my people? And do I feel
Mm.
comfortable enough traveling with them? So I love that you touched on that. It's not about me necessarily. It's about them seeing themselves there with you and having this shared
Mhm.
experience. It removes a lot of fear. I can speak
Yes.
to as well. Something that I've seen hosts struggle with is if they rush into launching and selling their trip without doing the like work ahead of that of building awareness, building an audience list, like getting that email list build, doing the Q&A. Like the 2 weeks leading up to the trip announcement are just as critical as like the day the trip goes live and what happens after that. And I think all that like pre-work that people do is makes a huge difference. If you were to just launch a trip out of the blue and your audience didn't know it was coming, you're really starting from scratch, and it's going to take a while to get them ready to purchase and book that trip. So I always recommend at least having like a solid 2 week game plan, and really building an email list on our platform is one of the best data points we have around conversion. And we can see, for example, if someone has an email list of 500 emails or more that they've built on the platform, they have an 80% success rate. It's over 80%. So it's really high, and you can feel confident if you're able to build that list. One of the questions here is around how many people do you need for a trip to happen? I know, Bonnie, you can speak to this too because you've done so many, but it's very trip specific. And I can go ahead and just take this one because each trip has a minimum. Oftentimes it's eight, sometimes it's six if it's smaller, like backcountry hiking trip where it's only 6 to 9 max. In some instances, it might be 10, where it's a more expensive trip, like South Africa. And so once you hit that minimum, you as a host go to log into the portal and approve travelers, and then it's officially confirmed. The follow-on question here is like, what happens if it doesn't fill? Have you ever had an unsuccessful trip that you had to cancel?
Yes. Yeah. We
Yeah.
actually have. It's so funny that that came up because I was in my host portal the other day and I'm like, we've had to pivot a couple times. And I think that, you just have to be okay with that because sometimes for whatever reason, it just might not be a fit. Like, I think we've tried to make Peru happen twice, and for some reason, it's just not hitting with our audience. And that's okay. Like I said, Trova isn't winning unless you're winning, so they want to help you, find something that is a fit for your audience. And it's important to not get too bummed out by that and just be like, okay, on to the next. Like, I'm choosing not to take this personally. What are the lessons that I can learn from this? Like, what feedback am I getting from my audience around why this didn't happen? But yeah, we've had to pivot from Peru twice, Norway, and Bali. So, I mean, it's part of the game, I guess, and just learning to be okay with that. Taking useful information on to the next one.
And I love that you're getting feedback from your audience because it can be a range of things. Like these dates just didn't work. We don't, my audience doesn't like traveling in December. Or actually, my audience is sensitive to this price point, or it just was a total fluke. We have no idea why. And so it's
Yes,
helpful
yeah.
to get that feedback. This is kind of into the weeds, but I want to make sure I address it. Is they want to know what happens financially if the trip doesn't fill. And I can speak to that. If the trip never reached a confirmed status, we didn't hit the minimum, we cancel down any folks who paid a deposit and we refund them completely. And then you as a host are not charged anything. That's one of the magics of partnering with TrovaTrip is we partner with operators to get preset inventory that if you cancel your trip, we just put it back on the shelf and someone can pick it up and sell those dates. They're locked in as soon as you confirm that trip, and it's going to happen. So pretty flexible process. If you were thinking about doing this on your own, you might maybe had to pay a non-refundable deposit to a hotel at a certain point. And so that is one of the benefits of working with Trova. And then this again is about the money aspect, and then we'll transition. Was how do hosts actually make money? Do you want to speak to that process of setting up your trip and how you maybe approach pricing strategy as an add-on?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a destination confirmed, you know where you're going, you have your dates picked out, all that stuff, you get to go in your host portal and you can set the ticket pricing. And so when you go in there, you'll see what Trova suggests, and they will suggest typically an early bird price for your first 8 travelers, and then a ticket price for the rest of your travelers. And they suggest the early bird maybe being a couple $100 more affordable than the other one. And you can toggle these prices up if you want to increase your earnings. On this page, Trova will also provide an example sheet. Okay, if you have 4 people sign up at this ticket price, here's what you earn. And as you toggle, if you want to toggle those numbers up, you can actually see your earnings increase if you went with that ticket price. So it's really, really nice and straightforward. And if you have, a goal that you're trying to hit as far as income from that trip, you can see what you would have to charge every ticket, to make that goal. I usually don't deviate too far from what Trova recommends just because they're the expert in that part of the whole process. I'm not. Um, so I really don't deviate too much. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really straightforward in the back end.
And then in the portal too, if you want transparency around what Trova's making, there's just a toggle where you can see our service fees and you'll see exactly Trova Trip's earnings per traveler. Because similar to a host, we earn per seat sold. And one of the benefits too is when you sell a larger group, 24 people, earnings usually get significantly greater because there's operating savings costs when it's a group of 24. One thing I've learned over the years interviewing hosts is for our repeat hosts, the magic number is typically I want to earn around $10,000 on a trip for it to be worth my time. This is hosts who are doing 3, 4, 5 trips a year. And you can always, again, just play around with the earnings calculator to see, okay, well, if I were to do this trip, how much could I make? And is this worth my time to step away from it if I have a full-time business, as an example? Jumping in,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Do you want to add on to that, or should I jump into the
Uh,
Q&A?
I was just thinking one other strategy that we use with doing 2 trips annually is we try to have one that is maybe a higher price point, and then the second one we try to keep lower. Just something that we've noticed works with our audience is having options. That way, if they can't make a trip that's around 4K, maybe this one that's closer to 2 is a better fit.
It's a really good call out. And I've also seen from hosts who do multiple trips that the more accessible trips are in, say, that $2,000, $3,000 range. They find that that's where they get a lot of new travelers, and that their repeat travelers see the value in these trips and understand how amazing this is. That they have a comfortability with spending, say, 3,000 plus dollars on an experience. And so when you offer a mix, it's a great way to get new folks in the door.
Yeah, and I think that's also true, like why trips to Bali and Thailand are such great places to start with because they're more affordable, and then you are getting their foot in the door, and then they're bought in for life after that.
Okay, so one of the questions here in the queue is going off of what you said earlier about promoting trips. I want to host multiple trips a year down the line. How do you suggest
Mhm.
advertising for trips without them getting lost in the wind and confusing for people as you do trips maybe quarterly or monthly? What does that look like?
Mhm. I think a really important thing for that will be going back to your pinning strategy. So if you have three upcoming trips, maybe each one of those is a carousel about the itinerary, answering frequently asked questions to that specific trip. But at least there, you could do three and have all of those easily accessible. Another great option for like having multiple talking head videos would be like highlight reels. So I've got Egypt, Iceland, and Thailand coming up. Each one of those has a highlight reel of me talking about it, a call to action. Here's how to book a call with me if you want more details on the trip. And then each one of those also has a pinned carousel going through the itinerary, any other relevant details you think that are important. But the more trips that you have, I think the better organizational strategy you're going to have. Understand that you might have people trip hopping, switching from one to another, which is fine, but just requires a little bit more organization strategy on your end.
And then kind of building upon that, what things do you do on trips as the host that you've noticed gets people excited to come back and book future trips? Because if we're getting to the point where we're promoting and selling multiple trips, repeat business is
Mhm.
important. So what does that look like for you when you're on trip?
Those are the people I am surveying. So I am already talking like we are going to link up and it's going to be soon. Like, where do you guys want to go next? Where else is on your bucket list? That would be if I don't have something with spots available. If I have something with spots available, I'm talking about that trip the whole time, right? Like, I can't wait for this. I can't wait to do this and this destination. Just making sure everyone knows about it. If I have something that is live, if I have something that isn't live, I am surveying my live, captive, excited audience while we're there, right? Because again, these are people that have said yes to you. They've raised their hands. They've spent thousands of dollars and taken a week off work to hang out with you in this incredible destination. So I am catering to their needs first and planning my next trip off of their interests.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a host sell their next trip on their current trip, where they're like, it's not even live yet. They're like, I'm thinking about launching this trip to Morocco here soon. Wait, I actually have an early bird link. And like they get back and they book it. And it's kind of crazy. Like those people who are captive are going to be your best audience to book that next trip. So it's great to get their feedback as well as let them know what's going on.
Totally. And make them feel special. Like they are the first ones to get that link. Like let them
Uh,
know they're your VIPs. They're gonna feel seen and special and excited and even more likely to book.
yes. So the next question here is, do you host destinations you've never been to?
Yes, all the time. Because we've actually only hosted to Iceland. That was the only place that we had been prior to starting with Trova. Everywhere else has been a brand new destination, and it's very easy to do. You don't have to have content pre-made that you've made to talk about a trip, right? It's very easy just to find pictures and share other creators' reels. I've been sharing other creators' reels of like the markets and the souks in Marrakesh because I'm so excited. I didn't take those, but I'm still sharing my excitement for a place and that I want to experience it for the first time with them, right? I want to have this first time experience with my friends, with my community. So yeah, there's no reason you have to have been there before.
This one's tough. It says I have had horrible experiences with trips that I have been to, but the planners have not. I always feel like I'm missing something. I just want to say if this is Trova Trips, please reach out to me directly. We can chat. I want your feedback. Lauren at trovatrip.com. If there's anything we did that missed the mark, I want to hear to make it right and figure out what we can do to improve. But maybe Bonnie, you can speak to things that have gone bump on trips or any tough experiences you've navigated with Trova Trip and how to get through it. Because travel's unpredictable. Things happen. We've had floods and had to move hotels or change things last minutes on routes because earthquake or whatever. So things do come up. And if you've ever had things, not go as planned, like how did you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, we've never ran into any floods or earthquakes. The only weather thing that I can think of was we had a camping trip in Alaska in August and it snowed on us. And it's like, what can you do? Like it not necessarily a Trova thing, but it's a weather thing. And I think when it's something like that that is truly out of your hands, it is down to how the host responds. Like if the host is bummed and bitching, then like that's gonna set the tone again, right, for the attitude that everyone else has. So my husband and I were just like, oh my God, it's beautiful. This is so crazy. We're not talking about we're cold and our stuff is kind of wet, but so again, it's what you choose to focus on in situations like that. One really unexpected thing that happened, I was just talking to Lauren about this before we started the call, was our trip to Egypt. My husband's 70-year-old mom was actually on that trip with us, and she slipped and fell and hurt her knee on the very first night. This was after the welcome dinner. The trip hadn't even really kicked off yet. We're supposed to see the pyramids the next day. And instead, it is midnight, and we are headed to the hospital in Cairo. And she ended up needing surgery, was going to have to miss out on the whole trip. And so we booked her a plane home, booked her a ticket home. We contacted Trova, let them know about the situation, and they were so amazing and so accommodating and made sure that she had help and worked with the airlines and made sure she had help and assistance at every stop along the way. And it was just handled so beautifully. But it was so sad and stressful in the moment because we knew she was going to have to be missing out. But so it was all handled wonderfully, and that would have just made it so much more complicated had we been trying to manage that part of it while still having to host a trip. So Trova stepped up big time, beautifully, like no notes. Any hiccups that have ever popped up have been handled fabulously. And I think that's also the beauty of working with a company like Trova, because they know you as a person. You're not just getting like lost in the numbers as some random host. Like they know you personally. So I feel like the level of care is just so elevated.
So great. And there was some questions around logistics, and I'm love hearing that you had a positive experience despite such a challenging situation. A couple of questions were around like what happens if things go wrong, and I'll just touch on that. We vet all of our operators for a certain amount of insurance. They need to have a crisis management system. We have crisis management systems in place. We have safety partners. We had trips running in Egypt in March as the war started unfolding. And, when you have these systems in place, you're set up for success. Safety is number one. It's always the priority. Similar to Airbnb, all of our hosts have a general liability coverage and umbrella coverage so that if you're hosting trips, you also fall under that. So if you think about doing these things on your own, there's some risk, right? If you don't have the right insurance, if you don't have crisis management systems in place when traveling internationally, that can be a scary thing. So those are things that we provide as part of our platform and services. And then maybe got time for like a couple more questions. Talking about group dynamics, how do you handle group dynamics or tension between travelers?
Oh, love that. Not really something we've ever run into in a serious way. I think this just goes back to what I said about setting the tone and the expectations at the beginning of the trip. If you set the tone night one, like there's not going to be any drama on this trip, and kind of present that to the group, they will hopefully abide by that, right? So when we're setting those expectations on night one, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it sounds like Be respectful of everyone's social boundaries. Don't take offense if someone's social boundary is different than yours. If someone needs quiet time, allow them to have quiet time. If you are here as a couple and you want to have a couple date nights, just the two of you, and you don't want to eat with the group, that is okay. Like, please do whatever you need to do to make this trip the best it can for you. Any things that like pop up and are an issue, you can bring to me and I will bring to the guide. But ultimately, we expect you to be autonomous adults that are capable of taking care of yourselves and working well in a group simultaneously. So that's like what we set for night one. And we have never run into any drama issues. I mean, we also attract like aging 40 something millennials. So I don't think that's like people that we attract. But again, it is all like up to you as the host and what you're allowing in that kind of situation, right? So there might be things where people are unhappy. I think you should absolutely do the best that you can to correct or accommodate or whatever that may be. But as long as you know that like you're doing the best that you absolutely can as the host, and their experience is still going to be their experience. There's only so much you can do. If you've done the best you can, like that's it at the end of the day.
I appreciate that. I think it's all about the vibe and energy that you bring, but sometimes things come up and you can always partner with a local guide too if things
Mhm.
are getting a bit tricky. Maybe a community guidelines breach. Again, there's systems in place to support hosts if it does get a bit too far. Um, then there's a question here. It's a really good question. I've read multiple reviews on Trova's site to try and help me pick my first trip. The main negative review I read is when Trova changes the hotel to a lesser quality hotel after the guests already booked and paid. So they feel a bit bait and switch. What can I do as a host to prevent that? I can explain the like operation side of like how the whole model works. And then Bonnie, if you have any firsthand experience around a hotel changing and how you kind of owned that situation to control the narrative, because I know that's sometimes what hosts do in the event that they do switch, but we work with destination management companies, operators like Intrepid, who are very large and can be running like 20 trips in one destination at a time. And so when we source and contract itineraries, we tell them our preferred hotels. We have packages, so you can do premium and certain types. And so it's really important when selecting an itinerary that you see what the hotel or similar is in the package that you want. We
Mhm.
also have set dates. So when we work with the operator, we say, hey, when we're contracting dates for the next year, these are the hotels we want, go book them. In the event that a hotel gets moved or changed, when it does happen on occasion, we work with the host to let them know, hey, this hotel has been changed and finalized. If we know why, we provide reason. And then we try and give the host a heads up so that they can control the narrative. Oftentimes we
Mhm.
get feedback if the hotel felt like it was too far and the other destination was in good walking distance, that can be a bit of a bum and a buzzkill. And I've seen hosts go, hey, but here's some things that are really cool in this area that is like really exciting and authentic in this location in Japan. Like, here are the things that we're going to do like locals. So Bonnie, I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you had a hotel that maybe you were excited about and it changed and like maybe how you overcame it.
Mhm. I don't think we've had anything like that happen that was like too last minute. So not something that I'd run into personally. I think our hotel this first night in Morocco got switched, but they also told us like 60 days out. So I tell people I'm like, it says this hotel or similar, so wait until it is confirmed, before booking that pre-night stay or whatever that is. But haven't run into any like changes very, very, very last minute where people had to switch. But I think everything that you touched on was perfect because it is up to the host to control that narrative because it wouldn't look right for the host to be like, oh yeah, Trova, like no, let's make this a good positive experience. Again, finding all those bright spots of like what is around this new hotel. Oh, look at the breakfast spread. It looks better at this hotel. Like whatever you can do to keep that done in a positive light, and also just explaining how Trova works and why this maybe happened. If you have that information, like it's okay to be totally honest with your travelers. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they work with Intrepid and they got overbooked or whatever the thing might be. Like, it's okay to share that with your travelers and just be honest about the whole process.
Yes, and if you work with a host success manager, ask them questions because certain itineraries are built around properties. Like we have a itinerary built around a property in Corfu, in Crete, in Greece. There's an Amalfi or Cinque Terre itinerary where it's set around certain hotels. So some of them are set in stone, unless of an emergency, a force majeure, we might have to move to a new location. But it's just industry standard when you're working with a DMC, when it's an operator like Intrepid. Intrepid won't show the hotel on their website. So it depends on the partner that we're working with, if there's more certainty around the hotel or if it could change. And so I think just having a baseline education around like, what am I selling and is that a variable risk? And then how do I partner with Trova to make sure that we know? And then there's also the scenario where we can make deposits in advance when your trip confirms. This is something we explore with our repeat travelers or hosts who are doing multiple trips. If hotels are really important to them, that's something we can lock in sooner. We just kind of partner with our hosts on a case by case to make sure that we understand what they want to achieve, and what matters most to them.
And yeah, communication with your travelers is key here, right? So as soon as that trip is confirmed, get everybody in a group chat. That way they know as much as you know, like almost in real time. So you can tell them, hey, my 8 travelers, here's where we'll likely be, but once the hotel is confirmed, I'll let you guys know. Just that way you can minimize the chances of them having to switch and any miscommunications along the way.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, if you know the itinerary is designed around certain properties, then you know it's safe to sell the property and share photos and that like this
Right.
is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Um, there's more questions in here and we'll go over just because I want to make sure they get answered if that's okay with you, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it possible to change the date of an itinerary to increase the change to sell it? For example, make a trip happen for the New Year's Eve instead of the current dates. Oh, I understand this question. I can take it. We have set dates in the portal. Those are going to be the most, like when you see those set dates, it's the most reliable, like you know exactly what you're going to price it for. If there are dates that don't work for you and you need custom dates, you can work with your host success manager to submit a request. I love this itinerary, but it's sold out. I really want to go this time of year. A great way to ensure more flexibility is in that request to say, this date range works for me. Give me the best rates, because if we do a set date and it's New Year's Eve, for example, I can guarantee you pricing is probably going to be expensive in a certain destination. So if you're pricing sensitive or that matters a lot, offering flexibility when you do a request for new dates is helpful. Um, I like that it sounds like people can do their own thing if they want on trip, no obligations. Is that the same for the whole trip or only certain activities? And what's the obligation if something happens while they're on their own time? Like maybe if something goes wrong. Maybe you can speak to your experience, kind of the vibe, the flow of like what you see your travelers do, and I can speak to if there's like an emergency or crisis.
Yeah, yeah, we've luckily never run into anything like that. But occasionally, someone is like, I'd rather like some quiet time reading my book by the pool versus going to the market. And we always try to be very accommodating and supportive of that. Like I said, like everyone's best trip has a different definition. And some things like, hey, we're all packing up and we're going to the next hotel. Like, okay, we all need to be there for that. So I think it's pretty obvious, like what things are, things to sit out at the hotel if you need to, or if it's everyone's going, like we've got this overnight train to the other end of the country. Well, then, we all need to be there for that part. So very just like activity dependent.
Yeah. And then as far as like what does it look like on trip for a traveler if they get lost or separated from the group? Everyone has access to our mobile app, which includes the itinerary and also a direct line to the local emergency authority if you need to call for help, or the local operator. Say, I can't get a hold of my guide. I'm, lost my group on the city tour. Can you let them know this is where I am? And so we have systems in place to support if, say, someone got lost or something happened, they know who to contact for support. In the event that a crisis is unfolding, say someone's lost and they can't find their way back, and we have a train we need to make, and I don't know, the operator will step in to support. And that's the beauty of going on these trips, working with a certified operator, as you as the host can continue on the journey with your travelers, and they'll ensure that that traveler gets the support they need to get back to the group or whatever the scenario is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes the host's late. I was 2 days late to my Costa Rica trip because of a snowstorm.
yes, these things happen, and that's the beauty. We have a guide there who can start the
These
trip.
things happen. Yep.
They're
I just
incredible.
met
They're
them where they were at.
yeah. And then lastly, our last question, then we'll wrap it. They want to know if hotels can do single occupancy or if it's just double. The answer is yes. Most itineraries are double occupancy is the standard. But we try and reserve single supplements is what we call them, so that people, if they're having their own private room is important to them, they can add that to cart. Not every itinerary can support that. I mean, for example, you're climbing Kilimanjaro, everyone has their own tent. Like, like there's certain itineraries where it's pretty set in stone. So if you ever have questions and you want to choose an itinerary that has private rooms available, just let your host success manager know if you can't find it, or ask support. We have live chat and we can help guide you to those itineraries, because we know certain audiences having private rooms is really important. So they select itineraries that have a lot of capacity to support people who want to have their own private room.
Mm.
Okay, that is a wrap. Lots of amazing questions. And unfortunately, I didn't get through all the questions that were submitted in advance, but it just goes to show that Bonnie, you're a wealth of knowledge and there's an appetite to continue to learn more. So I want to remind people, if they are interested in connecting with Bonnie, they want to book a one-on-one session. Bonnie has so graciously offered up her time to help support hosts no matter where they're at in their journey. And I just want to again thank you, Bonnie, for all the information that you have provided today. Your experience is really phenomenal, and you are just like you've got so much wisdom to part upon new hosts. So thank you so much. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. It's so much fun.
All right. Well, then I guess that's a wrap. For those who missed this, we'll have a live recording. If they want to revisit some of the topics, we will send that out. But we'll call it a webinar session. Bonnie, thank you again.
Thank you. It was amazing. I appreciate you so much, Lauren.
All right. Bye.
Bye.